Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn about pollination and its types. First, let us understand about the meaning of the term pollination. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the plant. Now, this anther and stigma could be of the same flower or could be of separate flowers. Depending on that, we can classify pollination mainly into two types. First is called as self-pollination and the other is called as cross-pollination. If the pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or flowers, separate flowers of the same plant, we call it as self-pollination. Now, self-pollination is commonly called as autogamy, but if we look in detail about the specific meaning of it, we will see the autogamy term more rightly stands for transfer of pollen grain of the from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. If it is between two separate flowers of the same plant, we rather use the term geitonogamy. Geitono, which means neighbor. So between two neighboring flowers, when the transfer of pollen grain occurs, we call it as geitonogamy. Now, the self-pollinating flowers can again be of two different kinds. You will sometimes observe that the flowers are completely closed. If it is a closed flower, there is no chance of cross-pollination occurring in them. So, xenogamy or allogamy is completely ruled out. Whereas, if it is an open flower, chasmogamous flower, you will observe that not only does it show self-pollination, but at the same time, there are chances of it showing cross-pollination. This self-pollination has an advantage. It does not require any pollinating agent. Since pollinating agents are not required, even if there is no wind, no water, thus there is certainty of the pollination occurring. Also, it is very important to remember that in any uncommon species, this one, the self-pollination, serves as the main means for the survival and perpetuation of the species. But there are some disadvantages also which we cannot ignore. It is that if it is a self-pollinating plant, self-pollination will not result into variation. There are no new genetic combinations being formed. So variations are not seen. Absence of variation leads to production of weaker offsprings generation after generation. So these are some of the disadvantages. You could be asked about the advantages and disadvantages in which you can mention the points. Cross-pollination is when the pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of two separate flowers of two different plants, but the plants belong to the same species. Now, if this occurs, it requires an agent. The agent of pollination could be either abiotic or biotic. Now, what does the term abiotic mean? Non-living. Biotic means living organism. So, if we first discuss about abiotic, there are few abiotic agents, like it could be water or wind. Most commonly, wind is called as the pollinating agent. So, wind, if it is the pollinating agent, the type of pollination is termed as anemophily. If the pollinating agent is water, we call it as hydrophily. We will learn about this in detail in the next classes. As of now, we will just go through a short introduction of all of these types of pollination. Now, like we said, biotic is living organism. There are different living organisms which can carry out pollination. Most common one is insect. Insects carry out pollination. The term given to them is called as entomophily. If it is carried out by birds, we call it as ornithophily. And there are a group of animals. Different animals carry out different kinds of pollination, but commonly we can call it as zoophily. Let us consider bats. Bats, which are nocturnal animals, if the bats carry out pollination, the term would be used as chiropterophily. In case of snails, do you know that snails also help in the process of pollination? Yes, they do. The type of pollination carried out by snails is called as malacophily. Now, like we saw in case of self-pollination, there are some advantages. In cross-pollination also, there are some advantages as well as disadvantages. Advantages could be, since it is having the mingling of the genes. It results into new genetic combinations, and that will result into variation. Showing variation makes it more stronger than the plants which are undergoing self-pollination. There are some disadvantages too. Since it requires pollinating agent, it is not always certain that the pollination would be successful. Why? Because let's say if there is a plant which shows pollination by wind and there is no wind, it will not allow pollination to occur successfully. So the certainty is not seen. At the same time, a lot of pollen grains get wasted in this process. So this is all about the types of pollination. Self-pollination can either be called as autogamy or geitonogamy. One thing that you can remember here, which is very important, is clistogamous flower, they are true to self-pollination, but chasmogamous flower, they do show self-pollination, but among them the process of cross-pollination is not completely ruled out. So this could be asked as assertion reason kind of questions. Take note of this. These are the different types of self-pollination as well as cross-pollination. In the next lecture, we are going to learn in detail about wind pollination as well as water pollination. Thank you.